Hello there guys, it's me Unstable Voltage and welcome to the 6th and probably final video in my Crusader Kings 2 Basics tutorial. I'm very aware that over the last 5 videos we haven't really done any gameplay and it's mostly been me talking over the game while it has been paused. And the problem is with games like this, they are very complicated and there's an awful lot to talk about. There's a lot going on and there is a lot to pick up. That said, the original idea of this series was so that people could get to grips with it and to take away some of the stigma that it is a really overly complex game to play. Despite the fact that there is a lot to learn, once you actually have learnt it, the game is relatively simplistic and a lot of fun. That said, I realise that having to watch through 3.5 hours of tutorial videos before you even unpause the game may be a little bit daunting. So what I'm going to attempt to do in this final video is just round off a couple of the mechanics that we either haven't talked about or we've just glossed over slightly, and then I will go on and make an actual series where we play through a game, and I will explain what I'm doing a little bit as I go through, because I do realise that in this series I haven't covered everything, and I certainly haven't covered everything in detail, even though it may seem like I have. But we'll just play through a game and we'll start putting into practice some of the things that we have learned in this series and just see how far we can get on. But there are a couple of things that I have either not touched on or just glossed over in this series so far that I want to go through and just make sure that you are aware of. So the first thing we're going to talk about is technology. It's one of the buttons that we haven't really had a look at yet. It's up here on the top bar, the two little gears. If we click the technology button, you can see that we'll bring up this little panel, and this has all of the current technology that we have in our realm. Now, it's divided up into 3 categories. We have our military technology, we have our economy technology, and we have our culture technology. Now, the big number at the top actually tells us how many technology points we have in that particular tech. So we have 29.6 military points available, we have 18.4 economic points available, and we have 14.8 culture points available at this time. Now they will go up over time, and you can see from this number at the bottom here, this is our growth. I think, yeah, it's monthly growth. So as you can see here, this is on military advances, we get an extra 1.152 military points per month. 0.96 of that comes from attributes, which is our learning plus our martial skill, and tech points per attribute point is 0.04. So there's not an awful lot of modifiers. Our king gives us an extra plus 20% because we're a king, we're not a duke. So the higher the level of your ruler, the more of a technology bonus you will get. Now, there are certain other things that do increase these. I believe fighting and winning battles actually increases your military tech. It's also possible that you will get random events, which randomly give you extra points in one of the 3 technologies, these culture spreads. One thing that is worth noting is if you've actually taken the option, the decision to expel the jury, you will get random minus 50 point technology drops as a result of doing that. So you do have to be quite careful about what you're doing. Now in each of these 3 categories you'll actually see there are 7 different subcategories. So under military we've got our various different infantries, cavalry, siege equipment, shipbuilding and military organisation. Under economic you've got the infrastructures of castles, towns, churches, keeps, trade practices and construction. And then under cultural advances you've got some customs, majesty, tolerance and legalism. Now you see under each one of these they are divided into 8 different little bars. Now I don't have my mouse over anything currently, so what this is showing me, this is the technology level in my capital city. Now you will also see that some of these technologies have a moving little gear beneath them, and that's because they're actually getting a neighbour bonus. As you can see, if I mouse over popular customs here, the wheels are turning, and it says popular customs 1.1, which is the current level, gaining 9.1% a year. So that's 5.2% from our neighbour's bonus and a 3.9% from our domain bonus. Now the neighbour bonus is the neighbouring province. Bear in mind, remember, this is our capital, so this is actually showing us what Vermandois is over here. This is our capital. If I don't have the mouse over anything, it's still showing me the capital province of Vermandois, as it says up here along the top. If I mouse over any other province, you will see that it's telling me there advancements in Paris, in advancement in Reims, advancement in Bar, advancement in Verdun. And you will see that there is some slight differences between each of the different provinces. But what happens is you actually get neighbour spread. So if one province has a higher tech level of a certain subtech than its neighbouring province, the technology will eventually spread across from one to the other. Obviously, the most important province to have high tech in is normally going to be your capital, because that's where the majority of things go on. Now, each of these 8 sort of blocks, these 8 boxes that you have within a certain tech, each one of those is a full point and will give you a very specific thing when you hit it. So if we go and look at legalism, for example, we currently have legalism 1 because that first block is fully highlighted. So that unlocks the ability to have the limited crown authority and the low centralization law. If we look at the second legalism block, that allows us to unlock the medium crown authority and medium centralization. Legalism 3, high crown authority, high centralization, and so on and so forth. Sometimes you get a couple of blank ones, but usually they will all unlock something. However, there are some that do give you various bonuses as they go up. Let's look at Majesty, for example. At Majesty 1, we have a monthly piety gain of 6.2% and a monthly prestige gain of 6.2% and minus 0.62 short reign years. If we look at Majesty 2, it will give us 12.5% piety and prestige gain and minus 1.25 short reign years. Now, if you actually look here at Majesty, you can see that the second block is partially highlighted. In fact, if we actually just mouse over the little wheels, we can see that Majesty is at 1.2. So we're about 20% of the way through that second block. So what that means is we will actually be gaining some of the bonus from Majesty 2, even though we don't have Majesty 2 completely unlocked. So Majesty 1 is 6.2%, Majesty 2 is 12.5%. We're about 20% of the way into Majesty 2, which means we're probably getting about an 8 bonus, a bonus of about 8. So it is beneficial for these individual boxes to be partially full, because some of them do actually give you some extra stuff even when they're partially full. Some of them only make a difference when they are completely full. You will notice every now and then that you have one of these little buttons that is highlighted, or you're able to highlight it, which is a little spyglass with an upwards pointing arrow. And that basically means that you have enough points in the bank to upgrade that particular tech to the next level. So our cavalry, which is currently at 0.8, so it's at about 80% of that first little block there. And if we mouse over, we can see that it would cost us 21.068 points out of our 29.669 military points. So if I go ahead and press that button, it deducts those points from our total, and it puts our cavalry up to Cavalry 1, which gives all of our cavalry an extra 7.5% attack and defense. Now, we've also got a few left over, 8.6. I could go and put that into military organisation, because I only need 6.238, and I have 8.601, so we can go ahead and do that. Now, some of these are far more useful than others. Military organisation is a very, very useful one to have, because it increases your morale of armies. It also increases your global supply limits, and it increases your retinues. And that's very, very useful if you want to have a standing army, because your retinue is always limited by this number here, by this cap. Current total is 3,640. Remember, that isn't 3,640 troops, because various different retinues have different usages. So, for example, this retinue, which is only 250 men, because it's 50 heavy cavalry and 200 light cavalry, that is actually a 900 retinue cap usage. So it's nowhere near the amount of men that you would actually have. So military organisation is a very, very useful one to upgrade. Light infantry also very useful early on in the game, because you'll mainly be made up of light infantry in your armies. Siege equipment very useful if you're taking over a lot of enemy territory, because sieging will allow you to actually not only siege other provinces quicker, but also defend your own provinces for longer. If we look down the economy advances, there's a few useful ones in here. Construction is very nice, because it increases the speed that things are built, certain buildings, and reduces the cost for building them. Improved keeps can be quite useful because it allows you to upgrade your baronies more quickly and gives you more options of buildings and upgrades to put in them, and that's something we'll look at in just a moment. And it's very useful to get these because some of the things that you can get will actually allow you to get more tax money and higher force limits. Also goes for the castle infrastructure, because castle infrastructure will basically give you higher taxes on your baronies, which is going to be very, very useful. You think if you get to castle infrastructure 8, you actually get an extra 50% tax on your castles, which is really nice. On the culture advances, legalism is quite nice because it allows you to enact a few more laws. Tolerance, not all that important. Majesty is quite useful, mainly for the short reign years. Every time a ruler dies and is replaced by a new ruler, you will actually gain a penalty, a diplomacy penalty with all of your vassals, which is short reign years. Because you are a new king, your vassals won't like you. Now, that does go away over time, but by actually having higher Majesty technology, it will go away much more quickly. Popular customs also gives your city vassal opinions, makes them higher of you. Noble customs is one of the most important because that's your feudal vassals, and feudal vassals are all of your dukes and counts and everyone that is below you. And if you get that up to Tech 8, you will actually, they'll have a plus 16 opinion of you just from that technology. Now, one other thing you can do from this screen is if you click on this little map mode button under a particular thing, and let's look at castle infrastructure as an example. If we click on this relative spread, what you can see here is a series of different colours. Now, the lighter the colour, the higher their technology level. So places that have a really dark blue. So if we look at Tyrol over here and we can mouse over, Tyrol's castle infrastructure is literally 1. They've got the first block filled if I mouse over Tyrol. And if we go and look at somewhere that is very light, like Dijon for example, they're pretty much halfway through the second block. If we zoom right out and go and look at somewhere like Byzantium, because they are nearly always white, Byzantium already have the second block in castle infrastructure, and they're actually working their way through the third. So it's a good way to see who has a higher technology level than you. Now that leads on to something very important. If you go into your council, you have 3 council members that can actually work to improve your technology. You have your... let me find them because I never get this the right way around. So, you have your marshal. You can get your marshal to research military tech, and that will increase the technology spread rate by 105% of your military tech. Your steward can go and research economy tech, and your... can never find the right one. I think it's just those guys, but then you have your spy master. And your spy master can go and actually discover technology. Now, sending your marshal and sending your steward to go and help spread a technology, that is fine. There's not really a risk involved in that. However, you can send your spy master to foreign lands in order to try and study their technology. Essentially, what you're trying to do is steal their tech. Now, as you can see, there is in this example, we would have a 21.37% chance yearly to study technology, which would give us a technology gain. However, there's a 1.38% yearly in the case of this spy master that we would be discovered. Now, it's not without risk, because if you are discovered, you could be imprisoned or you could be executed. But if you really want to get your technology up, best way to do is to take your spy master and send them somewhere that already has a high tech. And the best way to find it, say I want to get my noble customs up, I go and click on the relative map mode for noble customs and look for the areas that have a lot of white, because they will have the highest tech on noble customs, and then that is where I could send my spy master. So that is basically the technology in a nutshell. One of the things it does affect, as I said though, is actually with buildings. If we go into Vermandois, our capital, and if we click on Rethel, which is our castle, it is our main holding, you can see we have a number of various different upgrades that we can build at our castle. Now, some of these are actually showing a little stack of red coins. That basically means we don't have enough money to buy that upgrade now. Some of them show a little sort of representation of a castle, couple of buildings, that means that you actually have to have a prerequisite building. So as you can see here, for example, in order to upgrade to Stables 2, we would need to have 174 gold, which we don't have, but we'd also have to have Castle Walls 1. So we have to build Castle Walls 1 first. All of these ones that are greyed out on a black background means we don't have them. So we don't have Castle Walls 1, we don't have Keep Level 1. Stables is in green, which means we have Stables level 1. But if we had the money and if we had city walls, we would be able to upgrade Stables to level 2. If you mouse over any of these things, it'll tell you what they give you. So for example, Training Grounds gives you an extra 0.1 morale on your armies. It gives you a 10% bonus to your levy reinforcement rate and plus 20 to your retinue size. Keep increases your levy size and garrison size. Castle Walls increases your tax income and your fort level. The important ones to get, if you can, always get the ones that increase your tax first, because the sooner you get the taxation buildings up and running, the more quickly you can gain additional taxes, particularly Castletown, because Castletown gives you plus 2 tax income and Castle Walls give you plus 0.2 tax income. So build those whenever you can. Now you may from time to time, if we look here, you can see that this bishopric also already has quite a lot of upgrades. Church, Town and Church they've already got at level 2. But you can see a couple of these actually have the little cogs next to them, and that's because they don't have the required technology. So for example, to build the monastic school, we would require, where are we? The church infrastructure technology at level 3 in that province, and we don't have church infrastructure at level 3 in that province because church infrastructure is only just over level 1. So there are some limitations. Now, other things that you can do besides building these buildings here, and like I said, it gives you the cost and it gives you the length of time that it'll take to build them. Remember, you can reduce the cost and you can reduce the building time if you get advancements in your construction tech. Another thing that you can do is you can actually take your steward and use him to oversee construction, which basically reduces the build time by 60%. However, there's also an 8% chance yearly that you'll meet a master builder that will give you a massive boost to the construction speed, but there's also a 4.15% chance yearly in this case that the construction will be sabotaged and that will delay the construction or set it back somewhat. So you can build those things in your capital. Well, in any of your holdings. Now, you can also upgrade things in other people's holdings. So, for example, remember this bishopric isn't mine. It's run by the bishop, and this city isn't mine. It's run by the mayor. We could also go and look at other counties where they have baronies that are run by various different counts and barons. We could spend our own money and upgrade the things in their baronies and their bishoprics and their cities. However, as long as they're not your own direct holdings, because if they're your own direct holdings, you're the only person that can make those upgrades. These people will upgrade stuff on their own. If they have their own money, if they can afford to do it, they will upgrade stuff. And that's one reason why you don't necessarily want to go and tax all of your vassals. Because if you take all of their money away through taxation, they won't have anything left to upgrade their buildings. And upgrading their buildings does help you. Not so much in the case of bishoprics, because most of them don't give you any taxes or any levies. But certainly in the case of other people's baronies and cities, because the more buildings they have within them, the more, bigger armies they will have and the more levies they will afford to you. If you do decide to change some of your laws to increase taxation, so you might want to put feudal taxation up to small or large or even harsh, remember of course that will decrease their opinion of you, but by putting up your feudal taxation they will have to pay taxes. But remember, money paid to you is money that they can't spend upgrading their buildings, and in the long run that might actually hurt you, so you do have to be careful. One other thing that it's worth mentioning here is that each individual province can have up to a maximum of 7 different holdings within it. Now, doesn't mean to say that they will all start with 7, and some of them can't accommodate 7. If we actually look here at Vermandois capital, It currently has 3 holdings. We've got Rethel, the barony, and we have the bishopric, and we have the city. There are also 2 empty spaces here as well. If we go and look at some of the others, they're pretty much in the same situation. We've got a barony, a city, and a bishopric with 2 empty slots. If we go down here to Dijon, we can see again it has a barony, a city, and a bishopric, but it has 3 empty slots. And Bourgogne here actually has 2 baronies. Now, this particular barony here has its own baron in this barony. What we could do, if we wanted, is we could take it away from him, and we could actually control both of those baronies. Remember what I said about the colour? The green outline means that it is yours. The blue outline means that it is your ally or your vassal. So the guy that runs this is actually my vassal, but I could control it directly. What you could also do, and it takes quite a bit of gold, it's about 700 gold for the first one, is you could go in here and build a new holding, and then you could build a castle, a temple, or a city. Now, they take a very long time to build, and they cost a lot of money, but remember something very, very important. One of the most common things that you will do with your steward is you will put your steward in a province to collect taxes, and that's a local tax modifier of 60%. But remember, you can only put him in one province at once. So you normally put him in the province that has the barony that produces the highest tax. Now, you imagine if you have a barony, or you have a county, and you have 2 or even 3 castles in the same county. What you'll be doing then is you will actually have 3 different tax incomes all in one province, and your steward will be able to apply that 60% tax modifier to all 3 of those baronies because they're all in the same province. So a very, very good thing to do. If you have, like in our case here, our domain size is 7, instead of trying to have 7 individual counties that you have control of, each with their own barony, try to just control 2 or 3 counties and try to have 2 or 3 baronies in each of them, because you'll be able to make much more money by having several baronies in a single province with a steward than you will by having 1 barony in each province. The same goes for your marshal, because you can put your marshal in a particular county to reinforce your troops, increasing your levy size by 52.5%. Remember again, for each castle you have, for each barony you have quite a significant levy. So if you have multiple castles, multiple baronies in a single county, and you put your marshal in there, you will be able to get many more troops. So that's basically how technology works, and that is also how building upgrades and things work within your realm. One last thing that I want to cover, and then we'll probably wrap this series up, is plotting and threats against you and factions. If we actually go and look at the intrigue screen, which is where most of this takes place, we don't have any known plots at the moment, but we do have threats. Now, threats is anyone that may be putting together a faction against us. We can see who's putting together the faction, that they're a threat to us. We can see their name, we can see their primary title, we can see what their opinion is of us, and we can see how much of a threat against us they are. And if we actually mouse over them, we can see what factions they're a part of. So this guy is the faction leader for the faction for independence, but he's also a faction member of the faction that wants to lower the crown authority in West Francia. This guy is a faction member for the independence faction, and this guy is the faction leader to lower the crown authority in West Francia. If we actually go over here and click on the factions button, we can see that those 2 factions are actually represented here. We can see what they want to do, we can see who the leaders are, and we can see how many members they have. Some will have multiple members, some won't have any members, they will only have a leader. Now, it also shows you what their relative strength is, which is the relative strength compared to their liege, in which case is myself, how many men they're going to have. So this faction for independence could be quite dangerous, because they have an army which is essentially 48% of the manpower that I have, so they could field a significant force against me. Now, only the leader of a faction can initiate a war to enforce their demands. So what you want to try and do is several things. First of all, you could attempt to bribe and sort of get better relations with the members and the leaders, because if you can get them to like you, then they'll probably stop plotting against you. The other option, of course, is to do things such as arresting them or even having them killed, because if they're out of the way, then they can't join plots. Another thing that you can do if you go to your council is you can get your spy master to this first button on your spy master, and you can see the option there is vassal discouraged from joining factions, 46.61% yearly. Also, you can have noble encouraged to join your faction. Maybe you've started a faction against somebody and you want people to join your cause, so you can use your spy master to try and discourage someone from joining a faction. So what I could do is I could send my spy master to the Duke of Aquitaine's main holding, and she will try and persuade him to remove himself from this particular faction. You do need to keep your eye on these factions. If they ever get strong enough, if they get to a point where they have an army that is close to or bigger than yours, they will most probably declare war on you. And if you win that war, you basically put the rebellion to bed. But if you lose the war, then they'll enforce their demands. So the independence here is for West Francia. So if these guys were to declare and I was to lose the war, then West Francia would become independent. So you do have to be very, very careful and watch over these factions. Also, under the intrigue, you've got your prisoners here, which I'm not sure whether we went through these before. These are normally people that you've either arrested manually or that you've captured in battle. You do have various options. You can release them, you can ransom them. It's never worth executing people, because you do get a you do get a tyrannical penalty, which I think is minus 40 reputation with all of your vassals. It does go away after time. It's not a permanent thing, but generally, if you've got a prisoner and you can't or don't want to ransom them, just leave them to rot in the prison. It's absolutely fine. Now, the last tab is this known plots. Known plots are plots that we know about within our realm. Now, you'll normally find out about plots because you will normally have your spy master in your capital, and your spy master will be working to uncover plots. Now, whenever you find out about a plot that's going on within your realm, you do have a couple of options. You'll normally have the option to try and arrest the person that is making the plot, or you'll have the option to tell them to end the plot. Now, normally, if they like you enough, and the fact that you're their ruler, if they like you enough and you ask them to end a plot, they normally will. One thing you can do is you can click this button that says auto stop plots. If you've got that highlighted, then any plots that start, your spy master will automatically ask that person to stop plotting. Most of them will. Some of them won't. If they won't stop plotting, you've got two options. Try and arrest them, or try and assassinate them. And this is where assassination comes into play. Now, you can have one plot of your own at any one time, and we can do that by clicking this choose a plot button up here. And as you can see, we've got a couple of different options. We can try and invoke plots to revoke particular counties, and we've also got some plots to kill people. Now, in order to revoke a county or a duchy or revoke a title from somebody, you actually need at least 3 people to support you in the plot. If you try to kill somebody, you need only 1 person to support it so that you can try and kill somebody. Now, this is where plotting becomes very interesting. You'll find a lot of characters, this choose a plot button isn't highlighted because they don't always have plots that they can start. However, you can nearly always try and assassinate someone if you go to their character pane manually, and I'll point that out shortly how you get there. So you can click to choose a plot. Now, if your ruler has the lunatic or the possessed trait, you'll probably find that you have a plot option to kill just about everyone because, you know, you're a possessed lunatic and that's what you want to do. But let's say you want to try and kill somebody particular who isn't on this particular map. So let's say, for example, we wanted to kill the Duke of Flanders. We don't have the option to try and kill the Duke of Flanders. He's not here on the list. So what we could do is we could go over and find the Duke of Flanders. There he is. And then down here, just beneath his shield, we have the choose a plot button. And that would give us the option to kill him. Now, you can see it's actually giving us some numbers there. The initial plot power is 53.1%. With a possible plot power of 76.5. Now, in order to make sure that a plot is successful, you really need to have 100% plot power. It's not to say that you can't kill somebody off. A plot can be successful if you have less than 100%, but it is far more likely to fire if you have 100% or more. If you have more than 200% plot power, and I've seen it go up to like 500%, if you have more than 200% plot power, then they're going to die and die very, very quickly. Obviously, we like him, he likes us. The chances are a lot of the people in his court like him, and as a result, we couldn't get much plot power. Let's go ahead and say we want to do this. Now, as you can see here, we have 53.1% plot power. If we click on this button here, invite potentially useful characters to join your plot, this will bring up a list of people that could join our plot against him. Now, you'll see most of them have a little red thumbs down, and that means they're not willing to join the plot. And it'll tell you why at the bottom there. As you can see, various factors that sort of weigh this out is what their opinion of them is and what their opinion of you is. So you can see this guy's immoral, so he's got that going for him, and he likes us, so he's got that going for him. But they have a base reluctance of 2 anyway, and he also really likes the Duke. He's actually got 5 points in the Duke, so in total we've got -7 against and only +2 for. That guy isn't going to join the plot. However, if we go and look at this guy is actually willing to join the plot. He has some political concerns against the Duke. He does have some political concerns against us, but he's also immoral. And he has... he doesn't like us all that much, but he likes his Duke even less. He is willing to join this plot. That's why he's got a little green thumbs up. So we could right-click on him, and we could ask him to invite him to the plot. Now, we don't have any that I can see on this list. Sometimes you will see some that have a little sort of yellow hand that is held out flat, and that usually means that they're not willing to join the plot, but they may be able to be bribed. So you can right-click, left-click on... no, right-click, I was right the first time. Right-click on them, and you can try and send them a gift. Give them a little bag of gold, and try and encourage them to come and join a plot. Either way, we're not going to try and plot against this guy because we're not going to be able to kill him off. So what we're going to do, go back in, and we can see we've got no valid plots here. We can't click that. We need to go into our intrigue button, and then we can see the plot. And we can click this cancel button up here. Another thing you can do is you can actually click the auto invite plotters, and that will basically get the spy master to automatically try and invite anyone who will increase the plot power. You can see people's individual plot power by this number next to their portrait. So this bishop, for example, if we could get him on side, which we really can't, but if we could get him on side, he would add 43% to the plot power, which is an awful lot. So he could increase it significantly. If we just cancel out of that plot there, and we go and have a look and see if there's maybe somebody else we can plot. Doesn't always necessarily have to be people in your own lands. You can try and plot other people. What you've got to remember is, though, you don't have a lot of plot power abroad because you rely on people who like you to actually get involved and to help you pull off your plots. Now, something that you can do is you can take your spy master and you can actually put your spy master into another province, and if you select this build spy network option, and again, it does depend on the intrigue skill of your spy master, but in this case, the plot power increase would be 11.5%. So if I actually put my spy master in Flanders, it would increase my plot power by 11.5% on top of those numbers there. Just having a look around, maybe we can find somebody that nobody likes. Occasionally you find like this guy. Okay, this guy is a prime example. We have a current plot power of 45.3%, but if we have a look who's willing to join the plot, there's that little yellow hand. This guy might be persuaded with a bag of gold. It's not a guy, it's a woman, but might be persuaded with a bag of gold. And you can see quite a lot of these people have really high plotting power, but not many of them want to plot against him. There's another guy here that would be willing to plot. Now, one thing you do see is this is the potential plotters. This is his court directly. Now, what you could do is we could start a plot, which we have done there, and we could go to somebody else in the court randomly. And there are certain people that you will have the option to invite to a plot. But what we're going to do here, let's just go back into the intrigue panel, is we're going to, we'll unpause the game, and you can see not an awful lot is happening. If we click the auto invite plotters, then our spy master will basically then go through and try and get anybody who is willing to join onto this plot. And we may need to speed it up a little bit. There you go. So these are all the plotters that have been invited to join the plot. Now, any of them that have the little green dot above their portrait, these are people who have agreed and are backing the plot. Any that have an empty circle are still deciding, they're still waiting. So as you can see, we've actually now got it up to 175.3% plot power. There is every chance that this person is going to die. Now, the more people that you actually have on a plot, the more people there are to actually try and kill him off, so it's more likely to happen. Also, though, you're more likely that one of these people will get drunk and let the plot slip. And sometimes, even if the plot's successful, they still get caught. And obviously, you get a bit of a negative opinion. When people find out that you're trying to kill them, they don't usually like you all that much. You can see we've also got a few more threats. There's a few more people that are threatening us. If we go back and look at the factions, you can see there's 3 factions now. There's one for elective succession in Middle France here, and this one actually has 2 people supporting it on top of the faction leader. And the guy that's the faction leader is actually the Duke of Aquitaine, the guy that's the a member of this faction down here. Killing him off might be quite useful. Now, I don't have any valid plots because you can only plot against one person at a time, but if I was to untick that, and we'll go and have a look at this guy. See, we have a very, very low chance of being able to kill him in a plot, and that's probably because if we actually go and look at him and look in his court, most of his vassals probably really like him. Remember, this number is always their opinion of their liege, not their opinion of you. So the fact that these guys all have a positive opinion, that means they have a positive opinion of this guy. They have a positive opinion of their liege, not a positive opinion of me. If we actually want to find out what their opinion is of me, we'd have to click on them directly, and we can see that their opinion of me is negative. So none of the people in his court would be willing to support our plot to kill their liege because they don't like us and they all like him. Of course, again, that is something that you can do by putting your spy master in there, and you can attempt to spread vicious rumors spread, which will basically sever the relations between vassals and their liege, and it might make them a little bit more willing to join a plot with you. But that's basically how plotting works. So it's a good way to kill somebody off. It's particularly useful if you want to kill off an heir to a throne, because maybe it would put you in line to get it. So, for example, when King Charlemagne was still alive, before he had his son, we were his heir. Once his son was born, technically his son should have been the heir. What we could have done is plot to assassinate the son, and then he wouldn't have had an heir, and then it would have gone back to us. So there's all sorts of things that you can do with plotting, but that's pretty much all I'm going to cover in this video. I think that is pretty much all of the main day-to-day mechanics that you are going to find within Crusader Kings 2. So what I'm going to do is I will start a series. I think I'm going to do what I suggested and try playing as... well, I can't play as the Duke of Leicester because Leicester isn't a duchy. It's actually the Duke of Mercia, which is Worcestershire, Warwickshire, and Leicestershire. Because Leicester isn't just a county in this game. But we'll start off as the Duke of Mercia, based in Leicester, and what we'll try and do is we'll see if we can form the Britannia Empire, which is quite a bit to do because it means we've got to unify all of England, form the Kingdom of England, capture Wales, get the Kingdom of Wales, the Kingdom of Ireland, the Kingdom of Pictland, which is basically becomes Scotland, and then form the Britannia Empire. I'm not sure if we'll carry on once we get to that point, but we're going to try and do that. And if I have missed anything out, or if there's anything that you guys particularly want to know or feel that there's something that I haven't covered, then leave it in the comments and I'll try my best to cover that during the main playthrough as I go through it, because I don't want it to be like this series where I'm not actually playing the game and I'm just talking about mechanics. I do actually want it to be a series where I can actually do some gameplay. So we'll go ahead and do that. Also, obviously, as I've said, this is from the point of view as a noob. I do have about 30 odd hours on this game now because I've been enjoying it so much. I've been putting a lot of time into it. But if you do have any advice for me or any particular tips or any little tricks and things that you guys like to do, or if you think there's a particular mechanic or there's something that I'm not aware of that might be really useful or really fun to know, by all means put it in the comments. And what we'll try and do is we'll build up a little bit of a knowledge base that people can share in if they want to try and get really deep into this game and learn all of its little nuances. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this series. I hope you found it useful, and for those of you new to Crusader Kings 2 or considering picking the game up, I hope this series has been enough for you to realise that it is a really, really fun and interesting game. And although it looks complicated and there's a lot to learn, once you've actually got into it and picked it up, it's actually quite straightforward. It looks scary, but it's actually quite simple when you scrape all the paint off. So I will see you on the next video, which will be the playthrough series as the Duke of Mercia. So until then, thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you on that next video. Goodbye for now.